Well, squatties, it's a cold day today on the Shattered Isles, but welcome back to Dauntless. As always, I am D, and today it's time for another entry in the Fearless Slayer's Bestiary. This time, we'll be looking at how to hunt the Pangar. The Pangar is another cousin fight, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. Specifically, it is a cousin to the Gnasher. It's also the first, most likely the first beast you're going to encounter that has a new ability. Of its 9 attacks, 2 of them are personal buffs. One of them is the Enrage, of course. The other one is a new trick we haven't seen before. It is referred to as the Aether Charge. I personally call it Frost Rage. You'll see it a lot, or actually you won't see it a lot, because the thing about the Aether Charge, for the 2 beasts I'm sure of it on, there's the Pangar actually, as you can see where I mentioned White being a cousin to the Gnasher. But the Aether Charge you can actually stop. What you just saw there first was the Rolling Ice. It kind of does the same tell as the belly crawl, as the belly slide attack from the Gnasher, but then it does that. It rolls into a giant ball and moves at a decent distance before stopping. You can actually knock it out of that with a hammer shot or a pike shot if you're lucky, but you have to be very good at shooting it, so you got to be careful. Like I said, but it's kind of the same as the Gnasher, where it kind of lowers itself down, bobs a little bit, and then jumps into the roll. Now, one of my jobs as a pike user is to stop the Aether Charge, because I'll talk about that real quick. The Aether Charge, you'll see how it's building up ice along its spine, along the plates on its back. If all of the spines on its back, starting basically just behind the head, down to its tail, even the tail spike, it'll enter the Frost Rage, and it is a very important thing that... It's a very obvious thing that you can see when it does this. I'll try and kinda... Oh shit! I should have actually fired. Come to think of it. But it basically gains it doesn't gain any new abilities, but a lot of its other abilities, like the Stomp there, which is the exact same as the Gnasher's, by the way, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But a lot of its abilities gain a new effect, usually something involving creating shards of ice. And the thing about Aether Charge is it is independent of Enrage, so it is entirely possible for the Pangar to be both enraged and Aether Charged at the same time, which is very dangerous because it becomes faster and gains the ice abilities. So my job as a pike user is to try and stop it by slowing down how much charge it's got. You can actually do that by attacking normally with your weapon, or you can do what I'm doing, which is to use my pike shots to try and knock off the ice. Now again, the Pangar, just like the Stormclaw from last week, is weak to fire. Alright, let's get back to the regular attacks. There's a shoulder charge. It kind of steps back a little bit, lowers its head and shoulders, and then runs forward, using them as a battering ram. That has a very large hitbox, so you want to be careful and move quickly. There's a little, like, cat scratch kind of deal. It starts kind of like the Stomp, but it moves the foot forward some, and looks down while it does so. Like, it looks kind of back the way on the foot it's going to scratch on, so you want to watch out for that. It doesn't hit very hard, it's mostly just a space clearing tool for the Pangar. There's the Enrage. It just kind of draws back and then pushes forward and roars. It doesn't gain any new abilities from what I've seen. It just gains the, except for the tail swipe, which can go to 360. Of course, it also gains the speed and damage buff from the Enrage. Excuse me. Now, we've seen it a couple of times, but we haven't really seen it, is the Icicle Strike. It looks a lot like the tail swipe that the Pangar has, which is right there. By the way, that's a hitbox on the way out and the way in, so be careful. Anyway, the icicle strike. What it does, what the icicle strike is, the tail does not come down far enough to hit a Slayer. Instead, it stays up in the air. And instead it fires out large icicles that will do damage quite a bit and actually knock you back. I have yet to see if they can freeze you, mostly because I try not to get hit by them. There's the tail swipe. It starts a lot like the Gnashers in the way it goes, so again, I'm not going to talk about it too much. The difference is, again, when it's enraged, it can actually do a 360 tail swipe, a lot like the Drask. Now, sometimes with the rolling ice, right there, it'll actually go multiple times. It hasn't done it yet this fight, but it is entirely possible for it to do that. It also has the tail flip you saw. I think we've seen it a couple of times now. That works just like the Gnashers. Okay, it's retreating. Where it kind of takes a step back and then bobs itself up and down and then flips forward. Okay, that's up on the cliff. Oh. I got it. The polar incisor is supposed to be a rare drop from the head, but it actually comes out a lot more commonly than you'd think. Okay, let's see. Ooh, I'm actually going to grab some of this. Take a couple hits off the rift. Let's see, what else we got? Yeah, the tail swipe. The way it does it, though, is looks towards one side, body will shift away from that. And then it swipes in the direction the head is turned. And like I said, the tail hits on the way out, so on the initial swipe out, and when it's coming back. So you want to be kind of careful about that. There you see the tail flip. Like I said, it does exactly like the Gnashers, so there's not anything new to talk about there. That was the tail swipe. And again, the rolling ice. If I had fired my shot like a second or two later, I would have gotten a good opportunity there. That was actually the icicle strike, but I was too close to see it. Also, it turns out the icicle strike tail swipe can hit you. Good to know. There you see the scratch again, and yes, the tail swipe secondary hitbox on the way back, kind of hard to avoid sometimes. Also, my aim has been. To use a modern terminology, I've had potato aim all day. There we go. This is actually something you really want to do, is sever the tail. It does not stop. It doesn't stop a lot of the attacks. In fact, the only one it definitely stops is the icicle strike. But but the severed tail plate is used in a lot of Pangar items. There's also the fact that it just, weakens the entire thing. There you see the Pangar getting knocked over as somebody used the opportunity to knock it out of the rolling ice. And yes, the hitbox on the shoulder charge will hit you even if you're on the side of it. You're probably not going to actually get to see the Aether Charge this fight. Because we're actually doing a pretty... This team is actually doing a good job. And yes, even with the tail severed, the Pangar can still hit the Aether Charge. It just becomes a lot harder to tell when it's going to, because you don't have the full tail to notice. Also, that is one danger with the Pangar, because the Pangar is actually, if I remember right, one of the, if not the largest behemoths in the game, just in terms of physical size. So you gotta actually watch out, because if you are doing like I was for a second there and attacking the tail from the wrong angle, there's a good chance you will not see an attack coming, so be careful. Make sure your camera's at the right angle. Yes, big trees will still also form perfect barriers for you, so. And there goes the Pangar, so yeah, you're not going to see the Aether Charge today. Alright, again, on the way back, I'll talk about the attacks and how they work, and, like, tells and stuff. Just like normal. I did not do great that fight. Despite getting 3 golds, of course. It's because I didn't do any real... I didn't even earn a bronze on damage. Anyway, the attacks. The Rolling Ice. Like I said, it has a similar tell to the Belly Slide from the Gnasher, where it takes a step back with one leg, bobs itself up and down, then jumps and then rolls forward instead of landing on its belly and sliding. This is also your opportunity, because if you can shoot the Pangar with a strong, or hit it with a strong hit while it's doing this, you can knock it out and it'll fall over. You saw that a couple of times. You saw that once near the end of the fight there. So that is your opportunity to boop it. Yes, boop is the community term. Next up, the Icicle Strike. Starts off very similar to the Tail Swipe, which I'll talk about in just a second. But the tail does not come down as low. And it doesn't do the secondary swipe. It can still hit you with the secondary swipe, but it's not quite as fast. And instead of being low to the ground like the tail swipe, this is, again, high up, and it launches out several large icicles in the direction of the tail swipe. They look a lot like the shotgun. It works a lot like the shotgun spikes for the quill shot, but there's not quite as many. I think there's about 5 of these, and there's about 10 for the quill shot, so you want to be careful, because these icicles do quite a bit of damage. Alright, next up, the tail swipe. It looks towards one side of its body and shifts its weight away from there. After that, it will then swipe the tail in the direction that its head is turned. So, like, if it looks to the right and leans to the left, its tail is going to go towards the right. That's weirdly worded, but you saw what I meant. Now, again, a warning on this is that the tail has a hitbox when it's going through the full swipe, and when it's coming back to resting position, so be ready for that. Next up, the tail flip. It's the exact same as what the Gnasher has, where it kind of bobs it kind of, again, takes a step back with one leg, bobs itself for a second, and then jumps and does a flip. The main difference between this and the Rolling Ice, I think, is the number of bobs it does, because with the tail flip, it does about 3, I want to say, whereas it does about, I think, 2 with the Rolling Ice. But basically, if it's doing the motion like it's going to do the tail flip, like it does with the Gnasher, get out of the way. The stomp, again, this is just like the Gnasher. It leans itself to one side, lifts a leg, pauses for a second, then slams it down. Good AoE, so don't be on that side. In fact, you can actually, if you're good, and you have a good team, or if you're just good on your own, you can actually kind of trigger the Pangar by, if it stomps with its right leg, roll to the left side and attack its left leg. This will often trigger a chain of stomps for a bit. The cat scratch, or it looks like a cat scratching at the ground to me, or a dog doing it. It looks a lot like the stomp, but the Pangar will move the foot forward a bit when it raises it up, and it'll also look down and back. So if it's going to do it with its right leg, it looks kind of down and back to its right. before it does the sweep. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's got quite a bit of knockdown to it, so you want to be careful with the scratch. Sorry, I was reading somebody's somebody's bug. Anyway, the shoulder charge. The Pangar, it takes a step back with one foot, lowers head and shoulders to cover the side that it stepped back on. So if it steps back with the right foot, it's going to lower it. So it's going to bring down the opposite shoulder. So if it moves its right foot, the left shoulder's coming down. Left foot, right shoulder's coming down. Easy enough. It's then going to rush forward in a shoulder charge, and this has a huge hitbox. Like even if it looks like just a tiny party you clipped it, congrats, you're going to get knocked over. Be prepared to move quickly. The last couple of attacks are the buff attacks. The Enrage, which we did see, where it kind of thrusts its entire body forward and roars, and the aura explodes out. It doesn't gain any new abilities, but it does gain the speed and attack damage buff of the regular Enrage. And then we have the final thing. Again, this is the newest ability, and you're going to see this again with the Hellion, and I'm going to talk about why the Hellions is a little bit different, but this is the Frost Rage, or also known as the Aether Charge. And it activates, like I said, when the Pangar manages to build up ice from its head down to the spike of its tail. This takes a lot of time, but it does it passively as the fight goes on. So if your fight takes too long, it becomes more and more likely that you're going to see this. Pike users like myself, your job is to try and take the ice out with your shots. If it's a weak shot, a strong shot, whatever, if it looks like it's about to activate, and the easiest way to tell, I'll talk about that in a second, but if it looks like it's about to activate, take the shot at the shoulders, at the spikes, take the ice off. You don't want Frost Rage activating, it's very dangerous. But the way to tell that it's about to activate is, one, it'll have ice over the vast majority of its body, along the spine, but the ice also changes. You saw how it was kind of cloudy when we saw it? It becomes much clearer, or much more distinctive. It's a different color of blue, really, because it has a whitish blue color, kind of like the flames on my shoulders you see. When it's not ready, when it gets ready, it turns a blue more like the armor directly on my back, the one with the four-sided pyramid on my back you see. It turns about that color. I didn't plan for that when I colored my armor like this, but hey, it works. Now, again, Frost Rage does not seem to give the Pangar any new abilities, but what it does instead is that a lot of its attacks now create either large spikes of ice or gain some different effect. Like the Stomp will actually send out shards of ice in a direction towards the Slayer that triggered it. Also, I forgot to say that the Tail Swipe, this is the regular enrage, but the Tail Swipe can go 360. Remember, when it's enraged. The rolling ice is probably the most dangerous thing in terms of the new effect when Frost Rage triggers, because I haven't seen this recently, but back in the closed beta, rolling ice would actually create two large walls of ice shards, a lot like what the ice wall from the Scrave looked like, but larger and spikier. It didn't seem to do any damage, but it really makes it easier for the Pangar to fence you in. Well, alright folks. The Pangar is probably, when it comes to the Aether Infusion beasts, the Aether Charge beasts, it's probably one of the easier ones. I hate saying that because it's actually a pain in the ass to fight, but it's still a very dangerous beast, but it's probably because it's really the first one you encounter. The Stormclaw has a lighter version of it, as does the Nezaga, where the Nezaga charges itself with thunder, but you have control over when the Nezaga's ends, and the Stormclaws doesn't gain any, again, just like this, doesn't gain any new abilities, it just adds lightning damage to everything. And that's not really even a trigger for that, that's just something it seems to do at random. So we're really down the rabbit hole from this week on, folks, because next week we're fighting something I don't like fighting, specifically the Hellion. But we'll see about taking care of it. Until then, folks, if you enjoyed, please sure to like or favorite the video. You can also leave a dislike if you want, that's up to you. If you have anything you'd like to say, you can leave a comment down below, and if you do dislike the video, please let me know why. I do take comments, and I'm trying to make my content better. And if you want to keep up with me and understanding my current series, then consider joining the squadron and subscribing to the channel. That does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. As for that, folks, I have been D. We've bested the Beast of the Ice today when we fought by fighting that Pangar. Next week we take on a slightly different version with the Hellion. Until then, though, folks, good night and good gaming.